The vision for the future, this has always been, the idea is to be what we call a hearthfire community. Hearthfire, I believe that all of Crestone is a hearthfire community, but specifically, this is a term that we've used with Atalanta, a hearthfire community. This goes way back in ancient times. In ancient times, a hearthfire community was literally the community that kept the fire burning because they didn't know how to make fire. It was an opportunistic thing, and a community kept the fire burning so that anybody who went out hunting or whatever, who were establishing outlying little hamlets or something, they would carry the coals with them to start the new fire. So that's what a hearthfire community first came, that term. Then it became a hearthfire community meant something much bigger, which is what we are talking about. We want this to be a hearthfire community for sustainability and spiritual communication with the earth. So that when you come here, you are learning how to be with animals that we use and how to see them as spiritual beings, how to see the earth as a spiritual being, how to learn how to live sustainably and use the best technology and the least technology at the exact same time. So, this is the Atalanta cooperative garden. Not community garden, but cooperative. We all work it together. It's a cooperative CSA. So, being a CSA, people pay membership fees and the workers pay less than the non-workers. And we're not certified organic, but we only use organic seeds and supplements, etc. And we do deliveries, home deliveries to everybody and to the food bank from the garden during the season. We started the garden, this is about our 20th or 21st year. And we started out with having a permaculture land use workshop, not a gardening workshop because there was nothing on this land, but how to figure out where on the land was the best place for animal habitation, plant habitation, and human habitation. And as Jerome Osentowski said, he said you put the plants in their optimal place first because they're unable to move around or do anything. So you choose your very best places for the plants, and then you go with the animals because they're at our whim, and then humans are left with whatever is left over. So he and we chose this south-facing side of the hill because he explained to me, I wasn't familiar with this kind of high alpine desert thing, having grown up on the East Coast in Washington State and all of that. That cold air channels down the depression, down the creek bed. So you want to have a place that is above to lengthen your season, your growing season. You want a place that's above where the coldest air is going to channel down. So by maybe gaining a few degrees by choosing this south-facing hillside, we could prevent or lengthen our season by a few days on both sides. So using the principles of the rotational grazing, holistic range management, turning the goats out very selectively on different parts. We have a dry lot here, which means it's pretty much, the goats keep it completely devoid of vegetation. But then having them selectively graze, we just go out and making sure that they never graze down beyond a couple of inches. They will take out all the dead vegetation out there and actually increase the amount of green and stuff to give us a fire protection.
That's awesome.
The next thing we did was have Forest Service have the soil tested and have the Forest Service come out and talk to us about establishing a garden also. and the idea of windbreaks and just what they would consider this soil. So when we put in our watering system, all of which is solar powered, so our well is over here, so the water system throughout this acre, we never encountered a stone. Every stone that's here was brought in. We didn't encounter even pebbles, nothing. Layers of clay and layers of sand. And what the Forest Service or the USDA considers this is a stabilized dune. We're growing on a stabilized dune. The soil thing came back that we had very neutral soil. Unlike some parts of the valley that are very alkaline or whatever, we just have very neutral soil. And so the big deal was just adding organic material. That was what we needed to do. There were a lot of trace minerals. Everything was in balance, but it just was in desperate need of organic material to be growing. Yeah, so we started out with building the straw bale building, and then adding on we'll see, the first room there is the greenhouse, and then this protected place. What we found with this was that without shade cloth, etc., this, when it was completely covered, was going up into the 125 area during the day and still dropping to the 40s at night. Huge swings, which totally stressed the plants. So we took off the cover and surrounded it with recycled glass and use it for tomatoes, basil, peppers, things that like warm, but it doesn't get overheated. It just, yeah. And they thrive in that area.
How many chickens do you have out here?
I think right now we're at about 20, and probably 30 is our max. Right now. And the idea, the reason the chickens are housed here, I can explain. There isn't I don't want to call it a theory, maybe a practice. They're all different varieties, and they're all chosen for being docile, good layers, and cold and heat hardy. We have a straw bale chicken house. They do lay a little bit through the winter, but they're not prolific in the winter. It's not just heat sensitive. Chickens are very light sensitive. They don't lay in the winter because of light sensitivity. When the days get short, even on a warm environment, they will slow down. What I really want to talk about is the idea of a chicken moat. A chicken moat. This year we're going to extend this around the corner and down that direction. A chicken moat, you put your chickens around your garden on the outside because they eat bugs migrating in. In the summer, you'll see these guys, and rodents for that matter, they'll go after mice, they'll go after gophers or voles or anything that pops their head up, and they'll go after every bug, every grasshopper, everything that tries to crawl through. And so by putting your chicken moat, you're giving them the opportunity to be more natural chickens, like a pasture raised or a whatever. You're also letting them help you protect your garden.
Wow.
Here's the wellhead. We're 100 and some, right around 100 feet. And we're in the third layer of water. They hit water repeatedly, but they said the deeper that we went, the more reliable the water source would be in a year of drought or anything. So they went down and had water on top of a clay layer. Through that one, had water on top of a clay layer, and went to the third one. So that we're 3 clay layers down, so to speak.
Clean water.
Very clean. Very clean. We've never, even in the most severe droughts that we've been through in the early 2000s and stuff, we've never had a problem. So then our water system is interesting. You have to kind of wrap your brain around it in a way. We only use, we don't use anything above. We use soaker hoses and we use drip irrigation. We don't do any kind of spraying irrigation at all. So, our water system, during the winter, this is our only storage tank, but it helps regulate the temperature in here. And this funny little greenhouse was actually designed by Jerome Osentowski for the winter time. It's R60 in the ceiling, and it's insulated with reject sheep wool. So it's got about a foot to 18 inches of wool up in the ceiling and in both of these walls. These walls here, this is adobe from the early 1900s when they were tearing down a potato shed in the valley. The farmers got in touch with us and we went and salvaged adobe from the potato shed and built this wall as a heat sink. In the summertime, when we have much bigger water demand, of course, our water system comes into here and then passively, because that tank is raised off the ground, passively fills our cistern back here.
You know how big the cistern is you guys use?
1,500 gallons.
Wow.
So it passively fills this and it equals out, right? Okay. And then from here, we have two different systems in the garden. We have a active solar powered pump, pressurized pump system. We also have gravity feed. So the line comes back out and splits. And we have passive water for berry bushes and trees that runs at night. Everything's on timers. That runs at night, you know, a couple times a week for a couple of hours and does our fruit trees and berry bushes and that sort of thing. The pressure from the amount of water, it's empty right now. But that water pressure just pushes the water out. So it's the far edges of the garden that have the berry bushes and the fruit trees that can harvest the energy coming out of the cistern. This right here is our meeting room, solar. If we were to go into a prolonged freeze, we would fire up the wood stove and leave these doors open so that we had some protection from, you know, especially a prolonged freeze. When I say that, I mean like a snowstorm where there's no solar gain, et cetera, so that we're not harvesting sunlight or anything.
Are all these, is this plaster earthen or is it a natural?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, this is, yes. The walls are all. And then the ceiling in this building is also actually insulated with straw bale. We built saddle in between the roof beams. We put down like little support strips and we dropped straw bales. These are the big straw bales. Up there we use the 2-string smaller straw bales for the roof.
Wow.
The vision for the building is, it served a lot of purposes because we've had quite a few garden managers live here.
Nice.
In fact, there was a baby born here.
Oh, wow.
We had a kitchen set up here, sinks and all of that. And then out there are composting toilets. Out, you have to walk to them, but there's composting toilets. And but really it is set up to be a support to the garden, to be a place where we could do soap making, herb drying, etc., things like that. A support building for the garden. In the winter, all these strings hanging down, we just harvested about 3 weeks ago the last of the tomatoes from last year. We pull the plants up by the roots, hang them upside down in here, and we harvest tomatoes all winter long. And herbs. I mean, we dry our dill and stuff like that.
Jeez.
And we can look back here.
Should we close that?
And we are just in the process of finishing a really huge, what's going to be our root cellar. So this is straw bale also. And we're going to backfill the dirt against the back wall. But we have about a foot of gravel in here. And this will be our root cellar.
It feels cooler in here than the sun, for sure.
Yeah.
This is awesome. And you have rigid foam board up here just for a little insulation?
Yes.
Nice. Was this a community project with the people that, I see some names in the...
Okay. Yes, it's last year we hosted a group called The Human Force. And they are an international volunteer group that comes and has done projects all over the world, and they were supposed to come back this year too. Let's walk up to the hill.
Okay, yeah.
Because this hill has a lot of history.
How many acres is this, Joanna?
44. When Manitou granted the land, actually before we legally owned the land, we had a ceremony on top of this hill. And this is where Thomas Banyakia from the Hopi tribe, I'll get out of the, there you go. He led the ceremony. And we had people, about 200 people, from, I would guess 50 different countries, create a circle here. And he did a ground blessing and a transfer of stewardship of the land from the indigenous people to our group.
Wow.
And it was in July. And it was very wonderful and very powerful. And then we hosted a gathering for young educators from around the world. The theme of which was incorporating sustainability and environmental understanding into any subject area. And during that, Chief Orville Looking Horse and Lorraine Fox Davis, we also had a Maori elder, but they led a beautiful ceremony on top of the hill. And surrounding where Thomas Banyakio led and conducted ceremony, they created a medicine wheel. They asked the participants to go out and find a rock, a stone that spoke to them, and to bring it, carry it up here, and then create a medicine wheel here to anchor that sacredness and the understanding of the sacredness of the earth and of this piece of land. So our vision is that this will never be built upon. This is the sacred of the sacred on this land. This holds the sacredness, like a stupa would hold for a piece of land that the Buddhists were using. That this is the place that the sacred is really held and honored, and it will be a place of just visiting and sitting and meditating and appreciating.